Now, I don't work hard. I'm not going to lie to you.
Just as a disclaimer, I don't
I,
work
do,
hard.
I don't work hard. I'm sorry.
This is not an interview. There is no format. This is simply a conversation about life.
It makes me think also about my mother, right?
Mm,
My mom, she's retired now. She's long retired now, but she was a super hard working woman. Like she just worked really, really hard, and she would very, very often, like, we, neither of us, I was working at a club at the time when she was still working, and we never had, like, she would feel just as comfortable calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning as she would at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because she's like, the likelihood of me being awake or asleep is almost exactly the same,
yeah,
right?
right.
And and it was for her, so she would go do her 8 hours, and if they presented her with like 8 hours of overtime, she'd
Mm,
take it easy. You know what I mean? She would work these like 12, 16-hour
just
days.
hustling.
Like, yeah, she was hustling.
Yeah, yeah.
And now the, there's that level of person who works really, really hard. And I mean, she did make money because she had less time to spend what she was making, also because she was always working.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to think about that kind of person who is a hard working person, but not in the sense of, like, for her, it was always dependent on her being there.
Hmm.
If she doesn't go to work, then she doesn't make any money.
Yeah, right.
You know,
So you mean,
and
yeah, kind of like the line between, yeah, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, obviously, that working for somebody else versus working for yourself. Like she worked really hard, but it was for a job, and
yeah,
somebody else asking her to do something
yeah,
versus kind of making those shots on your own.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought about this because, as we talked before, imagine if she was putting in 16-hour days into her own business.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the fun stuff to think about. That's
Yeah.
exactly. Imagine what would happen. But that's also part of what's scariest for a lot of people, I think. It's
Mhm.
like it's because there's no guaranteed return in the short term, or for like the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
It's hard for somebody to be confident and just dive into the water
Mhm.
and have faith that they're going to be able to swim all the way across.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I get that fear. It's hard versus, hey, I'm going to clock in. I've got a guaranteed shift, and I
Mhm.
know when my paycheck is coming.
Mhm.
And if I work another 8 hours, then I'm going to get even more money. Um,
Mhm. So the lower risk and lower payoff. But I
yeah,
feel like it's only, I don't want to say only, but there is the perception of the less risk, I think, is something that we've taken upon ourselves, because people get fired all the time, right?
yes, they do. Yeah,
Right? So you don't have any guarantees. You don't really have a guarantee.
you don't have a guarantee, but it's like people like familiarity, and they're going to make a calculated bet on what's most likely to pay off in the shortest amount of time.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, you could be fired tomorrow, but you've done this 20 times before, and so you're fairly confident that you can clock in tomorrow and make your buck, and and kind of keep doing that until you sense that there's trouble on the horizon or something. So it's like it's a low risk bet. And so, people like to default to what's comfortable and familiar because it's safe, and they don't, it's scary to make any ripples or like changes. Because what you don't know is scary.
Where do you think that the confidence in the job comes from? Because the way you described it, right, is because you've done it, and I go in every day, and at the end of the week or the end of the month I get this pay. And so now you're really sure that all is good, the risk is low or whatever, right? But
Right.
I still go back to the idea that if you were doing this for yourself, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't work hard. I'm not going to lie to you.
Just as a disclaimer, I don't work hard.
I don't work hard. I'm sorry. I look at my life. I don't know how I've made it this far. I don't know how I live the way that I live, working as little as I have worked. I don't know how it happened.
You've probably worked harder than you think, but
I worked harder when I was. Here we go. I worked harder when I was younger.
Yep.
I
that
worked
makes sense.
really hard when I was younger, and when I was younger and I was making music, I was putting in the 16 hours then.
Yep.
Towards my dream. What I believed that my life would turn out to. Now, I didn't get quite where I thought I don't know. Actually, I've gotten where I thought I might go. Actually, yeah, I kind of did, except for the money part. Like, you know what I mean? Like, well,
Hey,
I guess we're talking about money, but like, generally speaking, I know that if I even put in 50%, not even, if I put in even 25% more effort, I could be out of here. You know what I mean? Like if I had, or if I even had the same work ethic that I had when I started, and was able to maintain that, I think I would be even farther along. And so
I think you're totally right. Yeah, no, I think you bring up a great point. One, by the way, it's so much easier to work harder and longer when you're younger because you've got the energy. You're not jaded yet. You don't know that, life is shit. But it's just easier. It's easier to work, longer and harder. And so as you get older, that fades away a little bit, and you're like, all right, I've reached cruising altitude, so I'm going to stay there because that's all that I have energy for. But to your broader point, I think people often forget that it's like starting a retirement account is way better the earlier you do it. And it doesn't matter how much you put in. Like what matters is just that you put in a consistent amount every month, let's say, or whatever. And so on a similar note, if you put in 25% of the work that you used to put in into your own business, into your own passions, personal interests, but you do it consistently, it's going to make such a huge difference over 1, 2, 3 months, and then 3 years. Imagine what it looks like versus doing nothing and kind of just staying at cruising altitude. Those, small investments will add up, whether it's time or money. Exercise, same thing, do it for 5 minutes a day. And it'll it'll add up and you'll feel better and you'll look better. So you don't need to, go go full throttle right away on everything that you're excited about in order for it to pay off.
Yeah. See? So then, which brings me to the idea that if you put in 8 hours for the man, you know what I mean? Whoever
For the man. Yeah.
For the man,
Yeah.
you put in this 8 hours for the man.
Yeah.
If you gave yourself 3 or 4 hours on a consistent basis for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you might be all right, because that's well, I guess that's even more than 25%. Like, if they're getting 8 and then you took two,
Yeah.
then you give yourself 25%. I feel like you should go a little bit more than that. Like, if you give yourself like closer to 4, you give whatever you're trying to do 4 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree. Imagine what could happen. Imagine what it would look like after 1 week, or, doing it for a little while. Imagine what you could achieve, right? Not even just from like a tangible perspective, but imagine what you would feel, probably pretty accomplished and just great about yourself. That's why, like, once you build up that momentum, I feel like it also snowballs, because you're like, oh, well, I've done 20 push-ups. Great. Now let's see if I can do 50. And you're going to be able to do that, because you're on the right track and you've like built up this momentum for yourself. I think what a lot of people struggle with is having any motivation or energy to do anything after 8 hours of working for the man or whoever it is. Which, yeah, that's valid. There are ways around that too, or there are ways to, kind of change your perspective around that. But yeah.
See, here's my issue with that, right?
It's a cop-out.
Yeah, and I don't want to use the word cop out. I don't want to use that word, but I'll just say I'll say it the way I was going to say it. My issue with that way of seeing it is, if your boss asked you to do this extra 2 hours, if your boss said, "Hey, for the next month, I really need you to give me this 2 extra hours," or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
The boss could get people to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Sorry, and keep going.
No, that's all I'm saying. It's like everything, like, the boss tells you this is when you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You listen to him. You know what I'm saying? You can only take your break at this time.
Yeah, exactly. Why does it take somebody else to get you into action? Why does it take somebody else to, get you to commit or, perform consistently? Mm-hmm. It's stupid. It's really stupid if you think about it. It doesn't make much sense. Like, shouldn't you be your best and most effective boss? Mm-hmm. How much more powerful is that, right? There's I'm sure more than one like thought experiment and study related to this, where it's like the concept is just that pretty much in any scenario where somebody thinks that they've worked themselves to their maximum, whether it's like physical exercise or mental, you can always get them to go one step or several steps farther just with the right incentive or with the right little tweak. And it could be as simple as like, all right, well, if you give me, 20 more push-ups, I'll give you $100. That person's probably going to be able to eke out another 20 push-ups, because now all of a sudden it's worth it. And so, yeah, it's exactly. There's not actually anything preventing you from going the extra mile. It's how you look at it, where the motivation is coming from as well.